Trying to define the sound of pop music can feel impossible because if we know anything about pop, it's that it pulls different sounds from different genres and different time periods. We saw the 80s come back very, very heavily when The Weeknd was doing After Hours and Dawn FM, where he was pulling from classic synthwave and synth pop elements from the 80s. We saw disco come back a little bit when Dua Lipa and Lizzo were pulling back all of the disco revival and having really funky upbeat bass lines. This is just always something that happens. You have these genres that were created forever ago and then kind of kept alive with underground artists, and then some kind of big artist will come along and really popularize it, and it becomes the sound of the summer, and it becomes basically the sound of the charts and of pop music for the next foreseeable future. So I always have a good time trying to predict what the next sound and what the next wave of pop music will be, and in this video today, I want to let you know what I think is going to be the next wave of pop music, and I want to give you some examples on where I'm seeing this pop up, how to produce something to it, and what to look out for. So we're going to dive in and check all of that out in 1 second, but before we do, I'm Austin. You're watching Make Pop Music, where we have weekly tutorials on music and music production. If you like this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really, really helps us out. We do videos like this every single Friday. Other than that, if you want to support us, head over to our website, Make Pop Music. We have free and paid content over there that you can check out. Sample packs, preset packs, MIDI packs, courses, infographics, tons of really, really cool stuff. Go check that out, makepopmusic.com. Let's dive into my computer so I can show you what I think is going to be the next wave of pop music. So when I'm talking about the next wave of pop music, I have a couple examples of what I think is really going to become a trend over the next few months to the next year. So we have a song by Jungkook and Lauten called 7. We have a song by Tori Kelly called Cut. We have a song by Pink Pantheress called Angel from the Barbie soundtrack. And we have New Jeans' Super Shy, basically their whole EP. So I'm not going to show you all of these because I don't want to get copywritten, but if you want to pause this video and go take a listen to them, you'll hear a very, very kind of similar theme that goes through all. So they're all slightly different subgenres. They're all slightly different artists. Jungkook and New Jeans are obviously over from the K-pop realm, and we have Tori Kelly and Pink Pantheress that are in the more Western pop, Pink Pantheress being from the UK, Tori Kelly from being here in the States. And so it's really, really interesting to see all of these international artists that are really all picking up on the same kind of common element. So if you take time to go listen to those, you're going to realize that the one common denominator in all of those is that they're a little bit more upbeat than pop music has been over the last several years, and they all have a very, very similar drum pattern or drum break. So I want to dive into Cubase, and I want to kind of dissect what the sound of pop music is with something that won't get me copyright striked, and we're going to dive in from there. All of the songs that I just showed you have a drum that sounds kind of similar to this. So it's a really, really simple pattern. It's just a kick, a snare, an accent snare, and a hat. This is basically loosely formed off of a drum break called the Amen drum break. There is a whole video that Ed Talenti did on his channel about this drum break because it's super, super popular. It basically helped form garage music, drum and bass music. It was used a ton in the 2000s. It gets used in rock music a ton. So if you want to learn more about the Amen drum break, go check out Ed's video because he explains everything much better than I ever could. But let me show you what it sounds like, and let me show you how to program it. So I'm going to start with just the main kick and snare. So we have a kick here from our Y2K pack. We have a snare from the Anderson pack because a lot of the time they'll use kind of like vinyl recorded snare drums. This is super, super funk inspired. So if you have funk drums, they work. If you have pop drums, they work. Let me show you what it sounds like with just the kick and the snare. So you can see that we're a little bit more upbeat now. We're at 132, where a lot of pop music over the last kind of 5 to 10 years has been between 95 and 105 BPM. I'm hearing things really speed up. I think people are a little bit tired of the halftime kind of down-tempo music. So we have this. It feels really good to me. One thing about this drum break, though, is it really relies on these accent snares and these hats. So that's just a pretty basic kind of syncopated kick and snare pattern at 132 BPM. It's nothing special, but as soon as I add these little accent hits, which are also from the Anderson pack, they're just a lower velocity, it sounds like this. And in solo, it sounds really funky. It almost sounds like an old James Brown record or funk record or something like that. Let's add some hi-hats on this. They're kind of going to do the exact same thing as that snare and accent snare, but I'm going to be playing around with open hats, closed hats. These are from the Anderson pack as well. I'm using them as a contact kit so I get full velocity control, because that's a big thing when doing some of these drum breaks is you want a lot of variation in the hats. So that's what the drum break sounds like, and you can speed that up and it becomes basically drum and bass that you're going to hear in a lot of the New Jeans tracks. You can slow it down a little bit and you're going to have something that feels almost more kind of 2000s alternative pop rock, similar to like Angel by Pink Pantheress, or you can leave it in that kind of like 128 to 135 BPM. and you can have something like 7 or Cut by Tori Kelly. And it just gives you a cool basis to kind of build a pop song off of, because it's not your traditional hip hop drums. It's not your traditional halftime, trap kick and snare. It's not your 4 on the floor EDM kick. I think that this is such a cool drum break to try to build a pop song from, and I'm glad that I'm hearing it come back. I really think it's going to be the next big wave. I really think that like 2000s melodies and instrumentation is coming back, and I think that this kind of garage drum and bass inspired drum break is coming back. So let's go ahead and let's kind of just show you an example of what it sounds like to build a song off of this. So here's what we have for the drums. I basically am just filtering them out with RC20. If we have no filtering, the drums sound like this. Again, it's a kick from our Y2K pack, and then snares and hats from the Anderson pack. If you want those are on our website. But you can do this with tons of different samples. It really is just about the pattern. Oh, I will say one thing before I move on to kind of fleshing out the song, is this pattern really does rely on using some kind of swung motion. So in your DAW, if you go over to your quantize, you normally have, whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth, whatever, all the way down. One thing that I think really helps when you're doing this kind of upbeat pop, and especially if you're going to pull from that kind of garage drum and bass, amen drum break, is adding a little bit of swing. So if you click on swing and you type in 66%, this will basically give you like a triplet swing, because it's 2/3 of 100. So what this does is this really allows everything to kind of have a little bit more fluid motion. Where if we were to just go with a 16th note, let me quantize these hats at a 16th note. And then let me quantize these snares at a 16th note. And you're going to hear that it becomes a little bit boring. It kind of has the same overall rhythm, but it feels much more stale. I really, really prefer it being swung and not so quantized. So keep that in mind if you're doing this. Let's go ahead and let's throw on this RC20 so we can have a little bit of that color. So for this inspiration, we're going to pull a lot from that kind of like Pink Pantherist style. It's going to be a little bit more kind of like indie lo-fi than it is super upbeat pop like 7 or like Cut. But we have this drum break. Let me show you how this can easily work into a pop song now. So I'm just going to put a bass line that does a really, really basic kind of 3-note progression. Just sounds like this. Gives us a nice little basis. And then in this style, I like kind of mixing live elements and kind of programmed elements. Technically, this is still programmed because it's from Contact, but it's a nylon guitar sample that they have. And what I'm doing is just processing it a lot with Kickstart, so it'll kind of sidechain itself. And then I'm adding a bunch of reverb. I'm adding some saturation and compression with Devil Lock. And then I'm just doing quite a bit of bandpass filtering. And it gives me this really gnarly, almost like grated sample. We then duplicate that, turn that up an octave, and then add a bunch more reverb and even more sidechain. And then now we kind of have the chord progression. We have a main little melody. We have a drum break. This is really enough if you wanted to stop here and build a song off of it. I'm going to add a couple more things just to show you how you can kind of flesh this sound out. We can add something like this little E-piano. So this is from Vital. I believe this is just from our Y2K pack as well. So if you've never used Vital, it's a free synth. As long as your program will run VST, so basically everything except for Pro Tools, I highly recommend downloading Vital. It's completely free and it is absolutely killer. But they have this E-piano in our Y2K sample pack, and I'm just turning down the spread because if we have it all the way up, it kind of leans a little bit more 80s with like that kind of like Roland mixed with a Rhodes. I'm going to turn this spread down so it becomes a little bit more mono, but it allows us to keep that chorus effect that we have. And then what we're doing is we're just adding quite a bit of reverb and EQ just to really give this some texture. We've got this little sparkly lead. This is something that you'll hear somebody like Pink Pantherist use a bunch because it fits in basically every song. It's basically just processed off of a sine wave. I believe that this one is from our Synergy pack from Vital. So it sounds like this. You can see here's a good example of where I use something like S1 to make this a little bit more mono. So especially if you're kind of leaning that more kind of lo-fi hip-hop realm like Pink Panthers does, bringing things into the middle can really help, especially if you want to go wider with a hook. So we have this kind of like mono-ish sine wave. Then we just have this rising pad. This is also from Vital with a ladder filter opening it up. And then the last little synth that we have is just this little rising ARP. Again, this is also I just used Vital a bunch in this because it's free and you can easily follow along. Everything from Vital is either from the Y2K pack or the Synergy pack. And this is just a little synth lead called Too Late. And then after that, we have this nice little kind of musical bed that we could build an entire song off of. One thing that I'm hearing a lot in pop music too is that songs are a little bit shorter and they don't have necessarily like super defined pre-choruses. So I want to talk a little bit about the structure, especially when you're working in a tempo like this. I find that it's just really nice to basically do like an 8-bar verse, an 8-bar pre-chorus. It's kind of instrumentated the same as the verse, just built up a little bit, and then drop it out for like half a measure and just have a really, really big chorus. So that's exactly what we did. We're not going overly dynamic and having some kind of dropout pre-chorus that was really, really popular in kind of the last decade of pop music. Instead, we're just kind of slowly building it up until we climax into the chorus. So here's what we have. I'm going to just play it all the way through, and you'll see that we have a little sine pad that will come in for this, what we're going to call the pre-chorus. And then for the chorus here, you'll see that we layer this up quite a bit. I can go over all of those layers in just a second, but let me show you what this sounds like and kind of what the structure of a current pop song is. All right, so you can see here that it's a pretty minimal verse, decently minimal pre-chorus, and then the chorus feels quite a bit bigger. So we're not doing that much to the production. One way that you can kind of keep your productions a little bit more, tightened up and not so huge is just by adding small layers here and there. So like we added this one pad in for the next 8 bars. We added all of these, but they're all pretty kind of minimal synths. Let me show you what they sound like. They're all just these little kind of like sparkly ARPs. So they're not really doing anything too major. They're not adding any kind of new melody or counter melody. So it still feels really, really simple. And then one thing that, if you really, really want to make a song in this kind of style and you don't want to keep building and building and building, just use filtering. So you can see right here with RC20, we have all of this filtered out, and you can see an automation lane where we're kind of just easing up on that filter. So let me show you what the drums sound like in the verse compared to the chorus. And then in the chorus, they sound like this. So you just let them become a little bit more bright and open. We just added this little garage perk that we found from Splice, and that's basically it. This style can be pretty minimal if you want it to be. It's really just about paying attention to automation, paying attention to layering when you need to, and then building off of something that feels really nice. So again, all of the songs in the reference that I showed you were kind of built off of that Amen drum break. If I were to speed this up to like 180 or something like that, it's just going to sound like the Powerpuff theme song. And that's something that I'm here coming back in pop music a ton. I like it at this kind of 132 BPM, but this drum break gives you a lot more flexibility than just doing a 4 on the floor or just doing a kind of halftime trap breakdown drum loop. I feel like with this little Amen drum break that you have a little bit of funk, a little bit of hip hop, a little bit of garage, a little bit of drum and bass influence. You can kind of lean that however you want. I could put rock instrumentation under this and it would sound like an Avril Lavigne track. I could put more electronic instrumentation under this and it would sound like a garage track. I could leave it like this where it kind of feels more, kind of indie pop. I could strip everything back, slow it down, still have that drum break, and it becomes basically like a 90s boom bap song. So try building off of this drum break. Try, you know, getting into this new style of pop music. Let me know in the comments down below if there are any other songs right now that are really using this style. I actually have a new single coming out really, really soon that's inspired by this kind of new wave of pop music that I'm seeing. So if you want to hear that, I'm sure I'll be doing a video on it in the next couple weeks. But other than that, let me know what you think the next sound of pop music will be down in the comments below. Let me know if you think I'm right or if I'm wrong. Other than that, if you like this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We really, really appreciate the support. I'll see you guys next week with another video. But until then, much love. Peace.